Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tips for Truthers. This one's an essential tip, I would say. I say this is quite important, though the execution of doing this is easier said than done. My advice is to try and find a way to stay grounded. Now, what do I mean? So, when you first start to discover things which go against previously preconceived notions about the way the world works, when you start to discover just how corrupt everything is, and the controllers and the secret societies and the possible alternative realities to the shape of reality, you know, the nature of the spiritual realm and how that interacts with our physical dimension and the way we exist, the existence of God, the existence of Jesus, the existence of a soul, of demons, of the devil, of a spiritual war, all that stuff, on top of all the media corruption and lies, the medical institutions corruption and lies, the food corruption and lies, the political corruption and lies and control, the New World Order agenda, all of it. And then while you're swimming through all this information and all your paradigms are being destroyed and crushed, you also then start going down really bizarre tangents, like things like the Mandela effect or the flat earth, or just stuff that really, really starts to warp your view of reality beyond something comprehensible to those around you, My advice is you need to find a way to not drown in all that information and keep your head above water. Another way of saying that is to stop floating so high up there in the ethereal of the speculative and try and find a way to tether yourself back to the ground. Now, the best way to do this is to find a way to interact with people who have nothing to do with the conspiracy world and don't think about it. Good people, obviously, but normal everyday people just going about their day-to-day life. Work colleagues are a good example for this. And try and interact with those people as much as possible without bringing any of this stuff up. So then you can remember what it means to not know these things, what it is for a person to not know this stuff. So you can then sympathize a bit more with the people who don't know and understand where they're coming from. Because I think there's this issue when you start learning all the stuff I've just mentioned, is that you start wanting to wake everybody up and shake them and point them in the direction of the things you see and say, don't you see it all, And people have a tendency, who are in this state of mind, to come on a bit too strong and scare people away and upset them and anger them, And because you've forgotten, because you're so out there right now, you've forgotten what it is to have the viewpoint of not knowing any of this stuff. You've forgotten what it is like to be like that. And you were there, But you're so up there right now. You're so out with the clouds, floating in this crazy world of information. You're so far out that those people just have no way of understanding you anymore. And you are starting to lose touch with people who are in quote unquote, reality, as they would call it. We know that the reality is false and a bit of a lie and illusion, but there's still a life you need to live in this world. So this is kind of what we're saying when it said, I think Jesus said, and Christianity in general has this idea that, you are still in the world, but you're not of this world, but you still have to live in the world, type of thing. I can't remember the exact quote off the top of my head, but it's this idea, don't be of the world, so don't be different from what people in the world are doing, so don't sin, basically. Be an upright walking example of a godly individual, and honest and truthful, which is sadly not the way the world works, is it, as we've understood, so you need to show people something different in the way you act and everything, but you still have to be in the world. You're still in the world with all these people who are lost, and don't know. And you've got to live a life in it. You've got to earn money to feed your family and yourself. And you've got to get a roof over your head, and there's things you've got to do, and you got to have experiences and live this life and make it a life worth living that God gave you, and don't waste it, But unfortunately, if you get too far out there and you haven't grounded yourself by, having a hobby that has nothing to do with this stuff, doing something once a week for yourself that doesn't involve this information, doing something once a week with your family and your friends where you just don't talk about this stuff. And I'm not saying go out there and sin. I'm not saying go out there and hang out with really bad people of the world who are ignorant and stupid and just want to make the world a worse place or anything like that. Try and find a constructive way to use your time, but you do need to take a break from researching sometimes and just stay grounded. So you can still communicate clearly with the people who don't know. Because the problem is when you get too far out there, your language starts to change because everything's been influenced by the new information you've taken in. You don't speak English anymore to people. When you start talking, everything's talked about through the perceived lens of the conspiracy idea. And that's just not a context people have when they listen to you discuss these things. They can't understand the context for why you're describing things in a certain way. It just seems crazy. Like, why would you say something like that? Why would you say it like that? When describing a world event, you might explain it as being something satanic and corrupt, and it's just the controllers trying to manipulate people with predictive programming. Someone who hasn't got a clue what you just talked about will look at you like, what? They'll look at you like, what is this person? Where are they? They're not here in the room with me. They're not watching the same thing I'm watching. They're too far out. They're in a different world than I currently am. We might be in the same space, but we're not in the same world. And that's kind of what Jesus was getting at, I think. But there's a right and a wrong way to do it. You want people to be able to come to you as an example and be able to talk to you openly. And to do that, you have to empathize with people. You have to see it from their point of view. You have to talk in a way that they can understand, from a context or from an angle or a view that they are currently in, not from outside. And the best way to do this and to be this type of character, again, is to find ways to stay grounded yourself. It's all too easy to just dive so deep into this information and go months without leaving your house or talking to people. And that will make you weird. It'll make you a weird person because you've forgotten how to communicate with other human beings. And that will have detrimental effects, unfortunately. It will make you not be able to find work or make friends or find a wife and start a family, or it'll make you lose friends and family. And I understand the desire to think like, well, who needs them anyway? They're just lost, stupid sheep and ignorant. I don't need them. I know the truth. They're just idiots. I know it's easy to think like that, but that's not going to give you a happy, conducive, productive life and make you a pretty productive member of the community in a way that's fruitful and useful to anybody. It isn't. It's going to make you a bitter, vile, useless human being, unfortunately. And in a way, the controllers win because they got to you. They've changed you for the worst by knowing this information. You haven't really changed for the better. We're not called to have a spirit of fear. If you learn this stuff, then you have to live in love and enlightenment and happiness. And when I say enlightenment, that isn't a new age way. I just mean knowing stuff that other people don't. You should take it as a blessing that God gave you the ability to see these things. And don't be in fear. They're a defeated enemy. And that means go out into the world and live your life and have the tools necessary to defend yourself if you do get attacked in it. But stay grounded. Take a break from this stuff every now and then and just make sure your feet are firmly on the ground with everybody else. Make sure you're in the same room everybody else is in. Make sure you're there and present in the moment with people rather than out there constantly worrying and thinking about this stuff. The truth is, a lot of the truth we have learnt is mixed up with lies. It's corrupted. It's difficult to interpret and hash out, and we may be wrong about things. So we need to be humble. And we need to be able to forgive those around us. And we need to be able to remember how to communicate with people who don't know these things. And the only way you're going to do that is to interact with them regularly. Listen to their conversations and the things normal people worry about on a day-to-day basis. And you'll realize, we're not that different. We all have the same worries, And remember that's what they're worried about. They're not worried about people controlling the world. They're worried about paying the bills, their sick children, their dying parents, They're worried about financial, whether they're going to make it to the next month. They're living in fight or flight mode because of the way the world is designed to be so corrupt and difficult to live in. They don't have time to worry and think about these crazy concepts that you've been researching. They just don't, and you need to forgive them for that. And you need to stay grounded and realize you probably have all those problems too that you should be focusing on and working on. And the conspiracy is the conspiracy at the end of the day, and it's always been there, and it always will be there. You knowing about it, there's no good to anybody dwelling on it, I suppose. Remember to come back to Earth every now and then. This isn't me saying be worldly. Don't do stupid things. Don't take drugs and start drinking and being an idiot, and having casual sex all the time. That's not what I mean when I come back down to the world. I just mean be here with people. Remember that not everybody knows this stuff, and they're probably not going to know, and that's okay. Remember that, you still have a life to live. So I'll think I'll leave it there. But yeah, that's my advice. Like I said, it's important, but it's hard to execute and to describe. But make sure to stay grounded. Find ways to stay grounded. Thanks for listening. And as always, God bless.